Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Water Trio. I'm here with my dear friends and colleagues, Cassandra, Tyndall, and Kelly Surtees, for all the astrology updates from the 26th of October through until the 8th of November. So we're slowly kind of grinding away at some of the trickier months in the year. We're slowly working our way out of that area. Where do we start first? I think we're starting with Mercury retrograding back into Libra, same day, almost the same time as Venus moves into Libra too. So who's going to start talking about that?
Cass, do you want to tell us about Libra since it's a sign that's so good for you?
It goes all right. Yeah, so what I do like about this, I mean, granted, Mercury is still retrograde at this point, but what we've got here is our planet of communication, Mercury, and the planet of peace, love, and harmony. We've got two planets coming together in a sign that really wants to negotiate, that really wants to strike a deal or get things happening. And so Mercury's right at the end of the sign and Venus is just at the beginning. So they're not aspecting each other, in that respect, but they're sharing space. And so it kind of shows that there's some type of deal that can come together, or maybe situations around money, or maybe what was, frustrating or tension inducing around the Mercury retrograde gets a little bit of, sugar sprinkled on top, or you might come into being able to strike a deal, or even just, going back over conversations with a loved one, or being able to, hey, you said this, but I need to check up on that, or, those kind of things. So there's a sense of things maybe not fully coming together, but at least there's some kind of common ground that is workable. What are your thoughts, Kel?
Look, I have different thoughts. Sorry, I've got to clarify my words. How very Mercury retrograde of me. It's not that I don't even know what I'm trying to say, so I'll just try and be clear. Oh my God, so Mercury retro. I have different thoughts about each planet is where I was going there. I really like Venus coming into Libra. This is a massive dignity change. Venus is in fall in Virgo and in rulership in Libra. So it's great to have a planet back on solid ground. And I should say it's great to have a benefic planet back in, a good sign. Now, life for Venus in Libra is not perfect, but at least she's got, full access to all of her talents or resources. She might have to deploy them, to deal with issues that she'd rather not address, but at least she is now working at full capacity. So I totally understand Venus in Libra is not perfect. The first part of Venus in Libra, she's in this long application to Mars retrograde. And so, there's a sense of some negotiations are required. I really liked what you said, Cass, about revisiting old conversations. Because it's like Venus is coming in the front door of Libra. Mercury is kind of just ducking back in the back doors. He forgot something, he left prematurely. And so with Mercury coming back into Libra, it feels like revisiting a negotiation or a discussion that was kind of left incomplete or not fully resolved from back in September. And when I think about Libra as a sign that's focused on justice and fairness and equality, I do think some topics of conversations to do with where things are unequal or unfair are likely to be back on the table at this point in time. Maybe with slightly potential for better results or maybe some more welcome progress, given that Mercury moving from being retrograde in Scorpio, where it's ruled by Mars, coming into Libra, where it's now retrograde but being ruled by Venus, and Venus is in Libra, it really does change the tone or the tenor of the conversation. And to have Mercury being ruled by Mars, where it's more adversarial, to Mercury being ruled by Venus, which is a little bit more inclined to collaborate or to find a middle ground. And look, it's hard to speculate what this will mean on a collective level, but certainly at a personal level, being able to find we can agree on this, or we can focus on that, or I'm prepared to meet you halfway around this topic. So I think that sense of creating some progress. It's really interesting to have two planets enter the same sign on the same day, but just from different directions. And it's going to be quite a big mood shift, I think. Mindset and, the way we're interacting with others. Tuesday, the 27th of October, quite a lot of things are changing. What about you, Leish?
Yeah, I agree with everything both of you have said. And I think, so that's Wednesday, the 28th of October here in Australia that's happening. And it's literally happening within, I've got it down, happening within 7 minutes of each other.
It's very, very close together.
So, and I like, the grace that Venus adds to all of this being in Libra. It's like the queen coming back home to her kingdom. So everybody's doing the right thing, because the queen's in the building. And also one of the things I love about Libra is the idea of the consensus model. It's like, okay, let's check in with everybody. Let's see what everybody has to say. Listen to all the voices. And it may take time and it may feel slow, especially with this Mercury retrograde in that time, in that space. But it's this sense of just take the time, because when we listen to all the voices, there's a richness and the tapestry that can be woven from this place that isn't there when it's just a single voice hammering something home, which is a bit of what Mars retrograde in Aries has been about. I think as well, for everyone kind of going, but isn't Libra a cardinal sign and isn't this all bad news? Do remember that when Mercury retrogrades back, and we'll talk about this soon, he's not coming into the full crunch. He's really only touching the edge of it, which is that Saturn. So he's not coming into Pluto. He's actually not going to oppose Mars again. He's just going to come to Saturn and then move forward again. So it isn't as intense, as deep and as heavy as it potentially could be. It's not like he's moving into a totally besieged position with all of this. So, and just it's something that happened with my daughter actually last time Mercury moved through this position, is there was lies being told about a certain thing. And when I went to the school counsellor to ask about it, he said, don't talk about it like lies. Just talk about it like, you said this, I'm seeing this is confusing, and just kind of present it factually, take the emotion out of it. And I think this is the beauty of Mercury moving out of Scorpio and into this Libra and air sign, is that if we can present things without the emotion, more on a logical, reasoned level of this air sign, it helps others digest it and it helps others meet us in that place too. So that's what I'd add in as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from here, we are moving into that full moon it's the 1st of November here in Australia, very early in the morning. So I think it's 30th of November. 31st. So this is Halloween.
I know.
Pretty much everywhere in the world. So
I just want to say one thing on that. If it wasn't a pandemic and if it wasn't a US election year, we're having a full moon on Halloween. Everyone would be having a party and planning costumes. Like, it would be a totally different kind of thing to a full moon, just a few days before an election in the US in the middle of a pandemic. Like, I'm just thinking, what would we have said about this last year versus what we're going to say this year is totally different.
Because wasn't it like a Mercury retrograde station on Halloween last year?
I think so.
In Scorpio?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because this is birthday season for me, and I remember it happening right around my birthday. So,
yeah. Happy birthday, Leish.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I'm almost a witch.
Almost.
So, thoughts. What are the thoughts on this full moon? Right on Uranus, like a hello. What is going to be up with the surprises and the potential intensity of this full moon?
Cass, do you want to go? I was so ineloquent before.
Well, again, you can't really talk about it out of this 2020 thing. Like, if it wasn't a 2020 year, I'd be thinking, all the lollies I'm going to eat and all the tourist food, and I'm just probably going to just go to town, but maybe I still will. But yeah, I definitely think like this is kind of perhaps going to emphasize maybe, where Mercury's been the last couple of over the retrograde phase. The moon is going to come, spotlight Uranus. This is going to be shocks, surprises, volatility, and maybe some disruptions in the part of your life you sort of really expect to be the most stable. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many things going on with this lunation. It's just so tight. And the idea is maybe don't have too many hard and fast plans. Don't expect that things are going to turn out the way that you thought that they were going to turn out. Just all of those classic Uranus pieces, I think, are going to be really important under this lunation to consider as well. And maybe just check your peephole before you open the door to trick-or-treaters so you know who you're opening the door to would be a practical word of advice potentially. I mean, already on the interwebs in my local area, people are starting, we obviously record these episodes a little bit in advance, and people are already starting to message on the community Facebook groups. Oh, are people doing trick-or-treating this year? Because I guess from the social etiquette perspective, should we be doing that? It's weird anyway, encouraging your children to take lollies from strangers when it's what we always tell them not to do. So there's that element there. But now in the pandemic circumstances, it's we don't really want kids going up to people's homes, and it's just this other level of, especially with Taurus, the physical body and what's safe, what's secure, what's solid, and the social etiquette, the ruler of this lunation in its own sign, what is the right or fair thing to do that still honors the spirit of the season, but maybe awareness of boundaries and things like that too. It's a very complicated lunation in my opinion. What do you think, Kel?
I mean, it is definitely complicated. I think the whole Uranus in Taurus cycle is just a contradiction in terms to start with because, as you said, Cass, Taurus is the one part of our charts and our lives where we kind of can usually rely on to stabilize, to calm, to ground, to nourish, to center us. But with Uranus in Taurus, Uranus is the planet of shocks and surprises and the unexpected and things being unstable or inconsistent or erratic. And, Uranus and Taurus are just polar opposites, that they're not equal to each other. And so there's a lot of, adjustments that is going on just with the general Uranus and Taurus vibe. And to have a full moon conjunct Uranus, this is a spotlight. This is okay, let's just, explode Uranus to make it bigger. And so we're going to get a lot more Uranus over this weekend. It's really telling to me that it's a full moon on a Saturday night. I think that's quite striking in and of itself. People doing things that are out of character or acting in maybe more reckless kind of ways. I can imagine this full moon conjunct Uranus has this risk-taking quality, but I don't think it's a great idea to take crazy risks, particularly with your physical body, if you like. I can imagine the full moon on Uranus has a lot to do with this idea of freedom. What does freedom look and feel like to you? Do you have freedom, and do you want to get involved in supporting more freedom for others? So there's a real sense of shaking up status quos or challenging norms or social, whatever the status quo is. It's well, is that the best way? And to your point, Cass, or I think it was Cass, about the full moon is ruled by Venus in Libra. So it's about changing things to create more fairness and equality for people. And there's very strong feminine themes. Historically, cycles to do with Uranus and Taurus have led to innovations in technologies that have given more freedoms to the females or the female-identified individuals in society. And so I'm interested to see how that sort of feminine freedom theme comes out over this weekend. And then I think, Halloween, Day of the Dead, this time of year, whether you're alternative in your religious orientation or your spiritual orientation or your kind of mainstream, because even in the Catholic faith, this late October, early November period is all about celebrating rituals to do with the dead. And it's interesting to me to have a full moon right in the middle of that in terms of how do we need to be learning things or seeing things, all that full moon illumination to do with ancestry or those that we've loved and lost and buried and things like that. So it feels like it's very meaty. There's a lot of layers to it. the full moon's going to happen around, 8 degrees in Taurus? And then we're going to have, a day and a half of the moon being quite big and full still in Taurus. So I think the full moon technically Saturday in North America or the Northern Hemisphere, Sunday in Australia, Southern Hemisphere. But I think it's really going to flavour the weekend and probably a little bit into Monday as well.
Yeah.
It's really big.
It's really big. And I think, one simple way to look at this is, and for many people, especially those in America, is having to really change up how you do your Halloween celebrations, what it looks like doing it at home. I know people are talking about doing, Halloween parties over Zoom, trick-or-treating in that way, and just looking at different alternatives to be able to do this. But I think that for many, whatever your Uranus in Taurus story has been, for those that have had the cardinal crunch going on, but the fixed signs, this is coming up for you. This is where this is really putting some emphasis on you and giving the cardinal signs a bit of a break. There's this sense of, okay, where is it that you've been trying to get access to your authenticity? It's like, because this is opposite, the sun's in Scorpio right now. We're in the middle of Scorpio season. I always normally love this Taurus full moon because it's the antidote to the intensity and the digging of Scorpio season. And this is usually, okay, let's have a break. Let's come up. Let's be in the moment. But this doesn't offer that because it's got that Uranus almost anxiety and restlessness. So I just think it's a sense of actually going back to the Scorpio side of things and going, okay, where is this restlessness pointing to me that I need to change, that I need to go underneath, that I need to discover where the friction lies and what's causing it? Where am I not being me? Where am I not showing up? And sitting with that and being with that and allowing that change to happen. I think, Kelly, you talked about this way back, the bend so you don't break of this Uranus in Taurus energy. So if you can get to the root of that issue using this Scorpio season, then it will help this very emotional, like full moons are always emotional, but this adds that extra edge of anxiety into it with Uranus there. It doesn't, if you're sitting in your emotions physically in your body and you're with them and you're processing them, then it helps you not be overcome or overwhelmed by the anxiety of this, if that makes sense. So yeah, I guess that's the extra thing I'd add into all the beautiful points you both made.
Super interesting. It's a biggie. I'm trying to think about what could be really lovely about this full moon in Taurus. And it might be some because I do think about the moon being in Taurus, and that being when the moon is exalted. And so being in nature or taking time to cook food from scratch or doing something tangible like, either having a massage or rubbing your partner's feet or getting your kids to give you a shoulder rub, something where there's the tactile sensory components of Taurus. And that could be helpful for grounding and calming if you do get any of the surprises. I always think with Uranus that when Uranus is really active, we get this sense of changes that lead to freedom. The changes or the surprises of Uranus are not meant to just be like, gotcha. They're actually sort of intended to stimulate a change in thinking or a change in behavior or a change in experiences that ultimately give you more freedom going forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, and when I'm dealing with clients, I'm like, Uranus isn't doing what it's doing to, irritate you or to make your life really bad. Particularly in the sign of Taurus, it is, I think, the most fixed and rigid of all of the signs. And it's just shaking up certain routines or way of doing things that have become stuck or stagnant. So when they're being shook up, whatever is remaining is the only thing that's really worth enduring or holding on to, or things will only be like, I often use the analogy of an earthquake, and while it's devastating and all the things, once the earthquake is done and the dust settles, only those structures that are still standing were worth being, were worth it anyway, because everything else just would have crumbled under that. And of course, that can sometimes bring some devastation and pain and loss and things like that. But when it comes to the rebuild, you get to rebuild everything even stronger and more and reinforced than what it was before. And so this lunation may, you know, kind of like really spotlight if you are going through some personal Uranus and Taurus transits where some of those situations in your own life might be presenting. And, you know, I'll admit, you know, some of my Taurus parts will like to dig my heels in and just be like, I don't want to change, or I don't want to do things differently. But this lunation might shine that light, and you may not necessarily have that choice, which sometimes is a very Uranus thing too, because if you don't choose the change, then the change chooses you. And that's where we don't have that feeling of control or stability, which what Taurus really does hold on to quite ferociously.
Yeah, totally. It feels like that process of, you know, like Glennon Doyle talking about being untamed, or, you know, a lot of people are talking about rewilding, you know, coming back to how we're meant to be and not living a social construct, especially those of us of the feminine gender, or who relate to being feminine. It's like we're so used to doing that Venus, be polite, do everything nice. And it almost feels like this full moon can be a chance to go, you know what, I'm doing something for me and just that suits me, and not that's all about being nice to everybody else. So, yeah.
Bit like what the wildling from Game of Thrones, you could unleash that like spirit within you under this lunation. I know you girls didn't watch it.
No, I read the books, but like so long ago, like in the 90s when the books came out or something. But I have read Untamed as well, and I think it's that concept of like rewilding and the inner tiger, and you know, there's some beautiful quotes in that book. Yeah, really powerful. Yeah. Even the concepts of Untamed, like how we when I was putting a little bit of
domesticated,
like domesticate, and I was like, even when I was putting a little bit of makeup on this morning, I was like, what's wrong with just like showing up with, you know, some age marks or whatever, and then, you know, it's just it's all of those little things that you may not realize you do to tone down or disguise or diffuse, instead of just showing up in the fullness of like, you know, the wildness of who you are. I think that wildness of Uranus, that's what makes me a little curious and a little excited about this full moon conjunct Uranus, basically. Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So
we'll see.
From there, we'll see. So from there, we're heading into Mercury stationing direct. So this is
happening. The end of Mercury retrograde.
Yay. So this is happening on the 3rd of November everywhere. So thoughts on this?
That's not an important date or anything.
Nah. It's probably someone we know's birthday.
Thoughts on Mercury stationing direct.
And stationing direct, square Saturn.
Is it relieving? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like normally the station is a little bit, can be the most intense part, but at least you know it's over.
Especially the second station.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the fact that there's crickets might be an example of Mercury stationing square Saturn.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I know Mercury is ending its retrograde on the 3rd, which is important. And then, you know, the classic sense of crosswires or not having all the information, things start to come forward in the days after that. But for me, it really is that square, that protracted kind of drawn out square to Saturn that captures my attention. And that, like, Mercury Saturn is thoughtful consideration. It's detailed research. It's caution when it comes to choices. It's diligence when it comes to submitting paperwork, for instance. And so, you know, for me personally, it feels like doing some heavy, deep thinking about structure and long-term plans and moving pieces on a chessboard where you're trying to organize and consolidate, like, you know, to the extent that you might have felt you've gotten a bit scattered or a bit disorganized. Mercury Saturn can be a time to try and put things back into some sort of manageable form or structure. Whenever I think of Mercury Saturn, I always think of my dad, who has Mercury Saturn conjunct. And, you know, he would notoriously read the newspaper with a red pen when we were growing up, and he would correct grammar mistakes in the newspaper. The Saturday Herald, Sydney Morning Herald. Honestly, I'd be like, oh, Dad, you've read this paper. Should I submit these to the editor for your feedback? And, you know, we were often asked when we were kids, like, how are you? And, you know, you often just say, oh, we're good. Yeah, we're great. And the correct grammatically proper answer to how are you is I'm well, thank you.
Yeah.
So the rules of language are really important to my daddy-o, and he taught us that. He taught us how to speak properly, and, you know, we were always, you know, given feedback if we were umming and ahhing too much, you know, and I've received a lot of positive comments as an adult that I am able to speak quite well without too many ums and ahs. I'm not perfect, but that had a lot to do with how I was raised. And so the rules of language, the rules of engagement, the rules of doing business, these are all Mercury Saturn things. So that idea of regulation, do we all agree on the regulations? Do we want to change the regulations? So it's that idea of like structure and form, and it's definitely dotting I's and crossing T's this first week of November. What do you gals think? I could babble on about this one for days.
Well, I think, like I was talking about earlier, you know, how Libra is the consensus model, you know, where you check with everybody and find out everybody's voices. But then you've got Saturn in Capricorn, which is the authoritarian. And so it's this sense of the tension between the two. And we're seeing this play out worldwide. It's like, you know, why are the authorities doing this? They're doing it their way. They're not thinking of everybody else. And that's been a real theme for what's been going on for a lot of 2020. And I feel like at this stage it may come to a head. So not sure what will happen globally, but definitely personally, it's that sense of where are we holding on to the strict structures of our lives too much, and where can we bring in some different thoughts and different ideas, and perhaps in a collaboration with others to get a different viewpoint on what we're doing, and whether or not what we're holding on to too strongly is actually holding us back, or is causing the delays, or is causing us to just stay staid and somber and sober, where you know, Mercury and Libra is like, okay, well, let's check the pulse of the room, let's see what everybody else is doing, and discover more and bring that in. But it is that kind of, okay, well, how can we meet in the middle with all of this? So the structures you do like to build in your life and those Capricorn areas are still honoured, but you can bring in something fresh and something new and something different, especially because this is coming to the end of the retrograde cycle. It's like, well, what have you learnt in the last 6 weeks as this has all been going retrograde? What is it that you've understood about Scorpio and Libra, this area of your chart, that's helping make informed decisions in this area too? So, yeah. What about you, Cass?
Yeah, I guess it really feels like the Mercury station is enduring. You know what I mean? Like it's not just like Mercury stopping and getting back up to speed. It's like almost like a week of Mercury station intensity because of that ongoing square to Saturn and the fact that it hits it twice. So it's almost like, if you think about, like, you know, submitting some homework or an assignment or some piece of work or whatever, it's like, no, go back and fix it up. But Mercury's chomping at the bit because it wants to gather speed and get back on track. But there's this feeling of like maybe like doubling over what you thought was already okay, or what had already gone through, or what was already agreed upon. But it's like, you know, Saturn kind of like really holding ground and really holding Mercury to task. And so there is this feeling here that it couldn't almost be like the longest retrograde station direct in history. You know what I mean? It's like, did the deal come through or did it not? Like, is it going to happen or is it not? Or is there some other criteria I have to meet, or do I not? You know, it's just sort of like really, like, if you're doing something in your life that requires getting your ducks in a row, this week is going to realize, like, maybe I actually need more ducks, or, you know, whatever the thing is. There's just really this feeling of the station just being so drawn out. There that it could really feel quite tough, you know, particularly at those cardinal crunch degrees as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Cass, because it's such an intensification, isn't it? Around 25, 26, Libra, Capricorn, where this square is going to play out and the station's going to happen. And it does, like, you're so inspiring with what you're saying there, Cass. It feels like there's a lot of checks and balances. You know, we need to go through the checklist and then, the checklist has been updated, so now we have to go back. And that idea of trying to create an agreement or get a decision about something and that being delayed. So, you know, in terms of clarity around exactly, is it this or is it that? It feels like probably having to wait until after Mercury clears the second square to Saturn at the very least, and that's not till November 6th.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's sort of like, the Mercury retrograde, the Mercury direct station, but it always feels like a continual of the retrograde just because of the nature of what's going on there, the back and forwarding with Saturn hitting the wall and then going back and trying again and hitting the wall again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I do remember you making the point, I think not last episode, the episode before, that this is happening conjunct Speaker. So there is that sense that there might be some protection.
The result could be good.
Yeah, there might be, and it might not fit, even though it's delayed, it might be like you can actually see the point of the delay and why you want to delay it. Like I know I was in a strategy session recently and we thought we'd get it all done within a certain window, and there's no way that it was going to happen. So it's continued, but it's definitely a much better strategy now that the extra time has been put into that. So even though it's been delayed, we can see the point of it and the richness of it. So there might be that sense of it too.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering too, like, because, you know, in Australia as well as the US, it's like stimulus package talks and more assistance are kind of like on the table and then they're off the table. Then they're back on the table and then they're on again. And this might be the week where, you know, a choice gets made or, you know, a continuation of those themes that have been leading up into this aspect might sort of play out or a final decision comes about. And it may not, with the speaker component, it may not be what we would like or what would be ideal, but it might be enough to at least, you know, add a little bit of benefit to that dryness or things being really thin on the ground with Saturn and Capricorn.
Yeah. So
I like that point, Cass. Yeah, I'm just thinking because Mercury in some ways, and we always talk about Mercury aspects as like giving another planet a megaphone. And Mercury Saturn is like, what does Saturn want to tell us? And Saturn in Capricorn is very much like, what is the message from the organizing body or the authority body or the governmental body? And then not getting a clear message because of the way the dynamic's playing out. So, yeah. Look, Mercury will be back into Scorpio in just a few days after this. So we'll
just get better again.
It picks up speed pretty quickly after. It's just like, just sit tight.
Well, and that's what I'm thinking about, like, you know, what in our personal lives do we do with this aspect? And I'm like, I think it's a play it safe, you know, don't count your chickens before they hatch kind of thing. It's a conservative, like, what are the priorities? Like, I do see square aspects as like adjustments and a little bit of choice making, you know, this or that. And you can take your time deciding, but really think deeply or do some research, gather some data that helps you make your decision. What do you girls think? Like if in your personal lives, like individuals, for instance?
I think it's also, you know, one of the things I like about Mercury Saturn aspects is goal setting. You know, it's looking at the long term and seeing what's possible beyond this period of time. But it's taking the time to really do it and to check the facts. And, you know, like you were talking about earlier, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. It's like, for example, if you're setting financial goals, you've got to look at where you are right now to be able to set goals for the future and have a look at your budgets and, you know, do all the spreadsheets. So you're getting into the Mercury details of things, but it's so that you can make a long-term strategy. So wherever this falls in whatever area of your chart, it's like, okay, get into the details, try to understand, collect all the information together, and then set those targets for whatever period of time you want to. But you can't just random willy-nilly pull a figure out of the air because it's not going to work.
Yes.
What about you, Cass?
Yeah, one of my things is you can't change what you don't track. So we talk
We've
about
heard this before, Leash, haven't we?
Only about half an hour ago.
So just to share with everybody, like I like to eat a certain way and train a certain way, and I have Mercury, Gemini rising with Mercury in the first house. So it's like when it comes to my body, it's like it's numbers, and it's like, well, if that's calories in, calories out, like it's kind of the energy balance. And so we've had all probably as much as we're happy to deal with Saturn in Capricorn. We're at the end almost of the Saturn in Capricorn road. So this could be a really good opportunity to reflect back on the last few years, track your progress, whether it's, diet and exercise, whether it's life goals, whether it's financial, whether it's a career plan, or maybe it's a home and family, domestics, children, whatever your last 3 years has been about for you. It's a really good time to put your Mercury in mind, or write it down, or have the conversation with your partner. Like, what have we achieved over this last 3 years, or what have I achieved over the last 3 years? And using those, what's gone good and what's not gone so good, and what can be improved upon, where can we tighten things up, or what do we need to change, like moving into Saturn and Aquarius. And in working with clients, I often, these aspects have come up, and I said, this is really your time to rewrite your rule book in whatever area does need to kind of, be pushed a little bit beyond Saturn's ring. So, and I do really think that on the personal level, because this is the drawn out station and the drawn out square, we have been given that the Saturn benefit of time to really think, Mercury, about this and where do we want to move forward next month when Saturn gets out of Capricorn. Just another dance for you guys.
I love it.
Yes,
all the dancing.
Yeah. And I think one last thing that I was thinking of when you were talking, we've talked about this, I think, a lot last year actually, about Saturn in Capricorn being where we say no, where we hold our boundaries. And this can be that message, that conversation where we're learning to say no even more strongly, or because of our Mercury retrograde, we've been reflecting on, hey, what do I want? What's going in internally for me? And then allowing that to inform a conversation where we're like, sorry, I don't like that, or sorry, that doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. I think that's your beautiful moon in Libra, bitchcrafting there, Cass. Yeah.
Sorry, not available for that. Or, in the more Saturn terms, it's, what they teach kids at school. Stop. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Clear choices.
Yeah.
Yep.
Clear eyes, full hearts. Anybody else watch Friday Night Lights?
Is that the one with like Connie Britton in it?
Yep.
I couldn't get into it. I love Connie Britton. And I also love the guy in it. What's his name?
I can't remember his name, but love him.
Kyle something. But
Kyle
he was in another show
No.
called Bloodline, and that was brilliant. But Netflix didn't continue it.
I obviously
loved
don't
it.
watch enough Netflix. I've got
This
no
was
idea
years
what either of you are
ago.
talking
It's
about.
a while ago.
Years
yeah.
ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I watched that series in like 2016.
Yes.
I still had a small
Chandler
child.
and Connie Britton. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
That was when I was living out in the middle of nowhere and had no internet access. So that
No,
explains that.
Bloodline was great.
Yeah. Well, Friday Night Lights was also great, but not for you maybe.
Couldn't get into it.
See, this is it. We're agreeing to disagree. Right?
But we love the
Perfect.
people
Mercury,
in
Libra,
it.
Libra square Saturn in
Exactly. We
Capricorn.
both
And
agree that Connie Britton's amazing.
And I loved her in Nashville. I love that.
Yeah.
The Nashville was the best. The best.
I actually haven't watched the last bit where they, where she left the show and her character got killed. I couldn't watch that. But
Yeah.
what was the guy in that show?
Oh, you loved the guy.
I did.
What was his name? Deacon.
Deacon. I
He was your
loved that
favourite.
character. I loved that.
Yeah,
He was just a bit rough around the
yeah.
edges. Anyway, so on that note,
So
Well,
on that
insights
note,
into Kelly Surtees.
what do you
We'll
guys
save that
got?
one for the.
Who did you like
Save
from
that
that
for
show? Which
Mercury
guy
Scorpio.
did you guys like?
Oh,
I
that's
didn't.
a good question.
I didn't
You
watch
didn't.
it.
You didn't watch it. Okay, so Alicia's
I
not
love
participating
like
in
the
this.
cowboys and the pickup trucks, because we don't call them pickup trucks here, but I loved the kind of
Call
rough
them
and
utes.
like,
Ute.
yeah, we call them utes.
Ute.
U-buttes.
It's not just a ute, it's a ute.
in the back of the Hilux, is that what they're called? Hilux something. Anyway.
Yeah, the
So,
Navara.
but Cass, some of the cowboys in that show were a bit pretty boy cowboys.
That's really hard for me.
Anyway, it's hard to
find,
remember.
like,
I know.
not enough sword fighting and blood, I think. So I couldn't really get into anyone on that show. The Last Kingdom, another story, but we could save that for another episode if anybody wants to learn about
They
that.
might have learned too much about us already today.
So, talking about this, what have you guys got coming up other than watching Netflix?
Oh, watching Netflix. Okay.
Well, The Crown's coming up.
Yes.
We'll be
that I
talking
will
about
be
the royal
watching.
family and their charts next up. Again, the Breaking Down the Borders conference is coming up for me this weekend. So you're more than welcome to sign up. So you can just pick lectures. You don't have to buy the whole package. That's the beauty of it. So astrology conference, was it, Alicia?
I think, yeah, astrologyconference.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
.com.
It'll be in the show notes.
And what about you, Kel? You got anything happening now?
No, the first week of November is an off week for me. It's a break week for my husband at his work, so we'll be chilling. We were planning to go away, but obviously that's not a thing right now. So we'll just be laying low, but it's the first week of the month. So my monthly membership will be going out to subscribers. That goes out on the first of the month to everybody. You get 5 videos, 2 PDFs. Basically, you get every piece of info you need to manage every aspect for the month ahead. So if you're interested in something more like that, you can pop over to my website and just hit Get Your Monthly Guide in the top right-hand corner and find out all the info and how to sign up if you're interested. So yeah, I'll be doing some teaching again starting mid-November. So I'll talk about that in our next show.
Cool. And you've even got an app for your monthly insights, don't you, Kel?
Yes, actually, I keep forgetting to tell people about that. Yes, you can find Kelly's Astrology monthly guide or monthly subscription in the App Store on Apple and in Google Play. So yes, you can actually sign up via your phone. You don't even need to come to my website.
Very
Thanks, Leish.
technologically advanced.
Well,
so Uranus
yes.
in Taurus.
Very, isn't it just? There was a lot of help. I did not actually do the technical side of things. I just do the astro. That's my jam.
Which is so good.
yeah.
As it should be.
Thank you, darling. You too.
Yeah.
What have you got coming up, Leish?
I am actually going to be starting teaching. I am going to be doing a 4-week course on intro to astrology, so starting with the planets. So that's going to be running from the 19th of November, and then that will continue then again in the new year. So, yeah, head over to my website to sign up for that and find out more details. And I think that's about it, really. If you are in my new moon workshops, don't forget to go and download your Taurus Full Moon meditation and ritual as well to help you along with
Very
that one.
nice.
So, yeah.
Yay.
Well, thanks for
Look
the
at
chit-chat,
us.
girls.
Okay.
And everybody who's been listening along, we love your comments. So, you know, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're podcasting, you know, please feel free to let us know what you think and how all of this is happening for you. And subscribe, like, share, do all the things. And we hope to see you next fortnight. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.